Back when bras and draft cards were being burned, the station wagon was hot, or at least very popular. And having a Woody meant something very different in the 60s, especially if you listen to Jan and Dean. If you don't know who Jan and Dean are, you may not consider station wagon two of the dirtiest words in the automotive lexicon.
Well, we don't use the S word, but some people call it a station wagon. We call it a 5-door crossover sedan, and that's why the guys in marketing get the big bucks.
The station wagon fell out of favor as minivans became popular in the 80s. My theory, you could fit big hair, shoulder pads, and kids in all at once. After minivans wounded the station wagon, the SUV ran it over. Sport utility vehicles became a fashion accessory that reached their pinnacle with a vehicle aptly named the Hummer. I'll let you draw your own conclusions.
Years ago, Oldsmobile had a campaign, "This is not your father's Oldsmobile." Well, driving this Toyota Venza sport wagon reminds me of, "This is not my mother's 1969 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser." It has some of the same characteristics. It's a station wagon, regardless of whether they call it a sport wagon. It's got a second sunroof in the back, or glass roof in the back, as it was the case of the Vista Cruiser, which is probably why it was called a Vista Cruiser, by the way. But it actually has all types of modern conveniences like seat belts, padded dashboard, and more than just an AM radio.
As someone else pointed out, we were free-range children back then, fighting over what was then called the mother-in-law seat and is now called shotgun. On the occasions when I got to ride in the front seat, I often ended the ride with ice on my forehead. That's because the neighbor's dog used to chase cars and my mother would jam on the brakes. I banged my head on the dashboard so many times that I'm surprised about two things. One, my pediatrician never called children's services, and two, I remember my childhood. That was back when the seats were vinyl, the dashboards were metal, and seatbelts were considered an annoyance if your car had them at all. Fast forward 8 presidents and gas prices that reached $4 a gallon not too long ago, and suddenly, unlike Kiana shirts and bell-bottoms, station wagons seem like a good idea again.
Okay, the Venza is kind of halfway between a sedan and an SUV. It's got the utility of a SUV, but it also handles more like a car. I mean, the platform is part Highlander, part Camry, and about a third of it's all new.
Now, while the Toyota Venza may remind me of my mother's Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, it is a thoroughly modern vehicle with all-wheel drive, satellite radio, keyless push start, and enough airbags and 3-point seatbelts to make sure that if I had kids, they probably wouldn't have weekly concussions.
One of the nice features of this Toyota Venza are these little cutouts in the A-pillar. They kind of look like old-fashioned vent windows, but they're a big advantage for visibility, especially for either short people driving or kids walking on the street. It's a lot easier to see them in the crosswalk with these little cutouts.
Yeah, they're very handy for looking around the side view mirror, for seeing pedestrians when you're turning. It's a feature we're rolling out in a lot of our newer cars.
The Venza handled really well and was also extremely comfortable, and I didn't feel like I was trying to push the New Jersey Turnpike out of my way. In other words, because it's less of an upright vehicle than many SUVs or minivans, it's slipperier with a lower drag coefficient.
One of the things I really like about this Toyota Venza is the positioning of the speedometer. It's actually low enough on the dash that the top of the steering wheel doesn't block the top of the speedometer, so I can see how fast I'm going on the highway. Right now I'm going 65 in a 65 mile an hour zone. What a concept. But I can actually see it on the speedometer. A lot of other cars, the top of the wheel blocks the speedometer for me.
The Venza gets 18 miles per gallon in the city and 25 on the highway. The 3.5-liter V6 gets you from 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds, according to published accounts. Now that's pretty darn fast for a station wagon.
It's more useful than a sedan.
The 2010 Toyota Venza starts at a little over $29,000. The premium package with leather seats, leather-wrapped steering wheel, power rear liftgate, foldable power heated outside mirrors, backup camera, Bluetooth phone and music, and a bunch of other luxury and convenience features, the price as tested was about $38,500. By the way, although Oldsmobile and the Vista Cruiser are long gone, my mother's still around and has almost as many new moving parts as the Venza. I'm Grant Winter reporting.